On today's episode of the CLS Experience, we have a very special treat. He's the growth and fulfillment coach and a major force in the world of personal development. He's a keynote speaker, New York Times bestselling author, and host of the phenomenal podcast, Rise Together. He's a passionate runner and fitness enthusiast who's faced fear head on. He's a man of faith and is on a mission to help others cultivate courage in the face of adversity. He's just an overall juggernaut in all facets of life and an unbelievable father to his small army of children. Get ready for some unbelievable candor. Please welcome the adventurous, brilliant, tenacious, and courageous, dynamic Dave Hollis. How you doing, Dave?
Let's go. What an intro, Craig. Man, I appreciate you having me in here.
I'm laughing because I love those intros. I take great pride in them. And I always get such a kick out of, the guest, their reaction, so forth. So I'm glad I did well by you, brother.
Nah, I appreciate it. It's interesting. I'm in a journey to change a little bit of the dialogue that I use when describing or thinking about myself. I have been a pretty harsh critic of how well I'd hope to show up every single day and how on the days when I don't, I can tend to be really hard on myself. Man, I really can. And so there's something beautiful about getting the gift of having someone else introduce you, especially as it's contrast against some of the ways that you might not always be as generous, kind, grace-filled with describing yourself.
I appreciate you saying that, and I receive all of that. But look, let's be honest. It's your life, brother. You wrote it.
It has been an adventure, if nothing else. I mean, certainly these last handful of years, the constant has been change, right? Either change that I chose or change that chose me. And
I love that you always say that, by the way.
The aftermath. Well, yeah. I mean, it's the truth. You're not going to outrun change. And as much as I'd love to tell you that, agency or like thinking you have control is going to be a thing that lets you dictate when change happens in your life. You're going to get a phone call one day. Someone's going to make a choice that downsizing is a thing. A relationship has to end. A diagnosis is now a part of your story. And how you handle that ends up being, primarily how you're going to end up growing, because most of the friction that comes in change is also complicit and responsible for how you become who you ultimately will in growth. But, there's also going to be times when you're just fed up being fed up, where you finally decide, hey, enough is enough. I got to make some change in my life because of an appetite you have for fulfillment or proximity to purpose. And those kind of changes, as much as you get to feel a different way because of the way it might make you, in more control, or the perception of more control for having made the choice, it still comes with as much friction, discomfort, jarring, nature of leaving something you're comfortable with for something you need. And I'll just tell you, as a person who's, again, had that change as a constant in the last handful of years, it's because of, not in spite of, the ways that those changes produced discomfort or pain or, forced me to my knees to learn in humbling kind of ways that I've become this person that I have. And I now just see it as, oh yeah, this is going to be the story of the rest of my life, always embracing the friction that comes and the change that either I choose or that chooses me.
Buddy, this is dynamite. I knew we were going to get deeper right off the bat. This is great. And I couldn't agree with you more. And it's like, spoiler alert for the audience, we just hit 1 million downloads. Adversity is a part of life. Nobody is exempt from it. But how do we handle it? What is our mindset like when we handle stuff like that? And as a result, like it's that old expression, right? Like life happens for us, not to us, so to speak. And you just got me thinking, like, I know before we went on air, we were talking about our commonality with running and fitness and so forth, and we'll dive into that in a little bit. But when I was training for the New York City Marathon a few months back, I was at a big speaking engagement. I got injured. It got misdiagnosed. Make a long story short, I had a tumor in my foot. And that caught me off guard because you never see that coming, It was supposed to be a sprained ligament. But ultimately, the old Craig, or even Craig from a year ago, would have handled that a lot differently. It would have been a lot longer of a pity party. But I just immediately, I gave myself the day and I just said, I know this is happening for me for some reason. Maybe it's an early diagnosis. We got it taken out. We got the stitches, the crutches, all that. And we were still able to run New York City and honor my pops who's battling cancer and raise money, do it for a good cause. But the point I'm getting at is when I couldn't train physically, Dave, when I didn't have the ability to go out and run because I was still healing physically, that's when I really started to buy into all this quantum stuff and the universe and the energy. And I'll be honest with you, I was always a mindset guy. I was always a little skeptical of the stuff that was beyond my senses. But if there was ever a time to buy in, it would be then when, when I'm on crutches, and boy, is that stuff real. I mean, I was just talking about it with Rob Deerdeck and Ed Milet. Like their face lights up like a Christmas tree, and I could see you getting exciting right now. It's like the first time in my life where I really see real-time manifestations, understanding all that stuff. But I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to really buy in had I not had the training taken away from me, and it was a perfect opportunity. So when adversity comes, there's always something that it leads to. If you with the right mindset, it propels you to something.
Yeah, it's interesting. At the end of 2019, I was at the holiday party of the company that I was at the time running with my wife, and I made this declaration that 2020 was going to be my best year ever, right? I was putting it into the universe, whether it was manifesting or otherwise. I just felt like I'd saved it for my 45th year on the planet, and that this was going to be it. And what I didn't appreciate in saying that was that I wasn't going to get a say in the conditions that would bring my best forward, right? Like I did end up having my very best year in 2020. It also, though, happened to be the very hardest year that I've ever had because of the end of my marriage and the identity shift that was, and having primarily identified myself as husband to her. Now that was gone, having, my work identity as someone who was working in a business that now I'd no longer be part of. I found myself, in the ashes, having to really do some of the work on who I was now that I was no longer who I'd been. And in, like getting on the roads, right? I said before we got on, like running for me was therapy in church, those long distance runs.
Same.
I ran more than 2,000 miles in that like years worth of time just after my divorce, putting up 200-mile months. And it was because of what is required in adversity to get to the bottom of what matters, and maybe more importantly, what never mattered or does not anymore matter at all. That you're able to get some clarity on who you need to be today to become this person that you were meant to be. And as much as very few people are going to quote Tyler Durden, I did in my last book, there's this line in Fight Club. Yeah, Fight Club. There's this line in Fight Club that says, it's not until you lose everything that you're free to do anything. And in the surrender, in the beauty of ashes at times that come in adversity, we're able to open our mind to the possibility of approaching things in a new or different way, learning, and like I said, a lot of times humbling kind of ways that are hard for ego, hard for identity, hard for normalcy, and any kind of certainty that we might have valued in life. The headline, though, is in those moments. It's because of the muscle being broken down that it's going to be built back up stronger. It's because of hey, the game's changed, so the playbook that's required to play in this new game is going to have to be different. You don't really contemplate what a different playbook might need to look like until you're forced to, because of the way that adversity changes the game that you're playing. And so in a weird way, I think for you, right, like you're able to look back on this experience and training with gratitude that I'm sure wasn't acutely present the day that you found out you had a tumor in your foot. In the same way that like I'm processing this hardest conversation ever of this marriage I never thought that was going to end after its 16-year run. I wasn't, and maybe you just kind of take for granted that things that have been will always be, whether it's your health or your relationships, your financial situation, whatever. But it's not until some of those things in going away allow you to have an appreciation for the kind of work that's necessary to not take things for granted, to be appreciative of what you have while you have it, without it ever becoming something that has you thinking it will always be there or last. So, and adversity has been where most of the best parts of me were born.
Same. And This is just gripping stuff. And for the audience, run that back, grab the journal, grab a pen. And I always say to my clients, perspective, rock bottom can actually be a beautiful place to be, because there's only one way up, right? And like you said, it enables you to be resourceful, to maybe open up some opportunities, or to be a little more open-minded than you typically would be. And same as you, brother, it's so true. On the backside of adversity has been my biggest times of growth in my life.
Yeah. What's interesting, I do appreciate everything that I've learned through adversity. And I wish it was just as easy as saying, like, oh, now that I have something of an answer key, I like just practice it every single day with the kind of discipline that I'd hoped for, or that I don't still fall into negative self-talk, or at times having the coping mechanism that isn't ideal pop up and become that crutch that I lean on. And just because you know what to do doesn't mean that you necessarily do it. I was having a conversation with my friend Brendan Burchard not terribly long ago. We were talking about the gates that people have to go through for real transformation. It's awareness and accountability, but the fourth of the four gates is action. And it's a gate that you have to walk through every single day. And in a crazy way, like the last couple of years have taught me so much in how, if I were to live in integrity with what I've now learned, I could do so in a way that produces less pain, that has me feeling great about myself when I'm by myself, but it requires taking that action every single day. And just because you know what you're meant to do doesn't mean that necessarily it's easy to stay disciplined when the circumstances of life end up shifting in ways that are, less predictable or might catch you off guard at times.
Yeah, this is just riveting, brother. And I saw you say something along the lines of this. I don't want to misquote it, but it was like, when you are going through something like that, like you need to honor, I'm not sure if you said the creator or the intention, to really see what this is all about, and then propel it and utilize it to facilitate some sort of growth.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a through line in Built Through Courage, the book that I had come out in October, or just what I kind of feel like my mission on planet Earth ends up being, it's to help people appreciate that each of us was placed here by a creator that did so with very deliberate intention in mind. Like, I think that you, Craig, have been through individual experiences, have very specific wiring, think and feel in ways that are unique to you and only you. And that the limited edition, one of one existence that you possess then comes with a mandate of sorts to every single day do the work that you can to honor the intention of that creator. And again, like on the days when I, at the end of a night, am putting my head on the pillow and I know, I absolutely did my best to actualize all of the gifts that were inside of me, to bring the light that people desperately need to bear, that I lived in integrity with who I know I'd have to be to become the version of who I was meant to become. In this, the only day that I can control. When there's integrity in actions and opportunity, I feel great. When there's dissonance, right? When like I'm laying my head down and I know I could have put in more effort, or I could have been more disciplined, or I could have had better habits and routines, or could have had better boundaries, or whatever it might be. That dissonance, that space that exists between who I could have been and who I showed up as, is where my shame, my negative self-talk, my lack of motivation, the way that I don't feel great about myself when I'm by myself, it just thrives in that space. And my goal is to try and close that gap. Yeah. And the goal that I have with anybody that I coach or that I have as a client is to help them develop the self-awareness to understand where they are and the kind of work, the action that they'd have to take on an every single day basis to create integrity with this version of who they say they want to or believe themselves to be placed on the planet to become. And just because it doesn't make it easy. No, it doesn't make it easy. But as you're able to find like what's the next right step in integrity, what's that next right move I could make, as you make them consistently, you give yourself a chance to actually become this intended version of who you were created to be. But you also get to feel great about yourself. You get pride, you get a sense of accomplishment, a feeling of developing mastery over time, the things that are necessary to feel like you are closer to honoring intention of creator or purpose, or something that is meaningful, that's going to have you feeling fulfilled in life.
This is gold, brother. I'm happy because I just love you. I would drop the mic, but I want to continue the conversation. And it's funny, I was just talking about this in my membership about an hour ago. Like, for everyone out there that's looking to become a better version of themselves, like, and I also just posted this today, I think, a quote on social media. It's not what you achieve, it's who you become. And for those out there that, like, it's the beginning of 2022, like you want to make some big changes, like think of yourself the best version of you, like the highest quality version of you that possibly could exist. Like, what would that look like? What would that person do on a day-to-day basis? What habits would they cultivate? Would they love themselves? Like how would they treat other people? All those things. And then now that you have a target, so to speak, because you can't hit a target you can't see, you can work each and every day to become the best version of you that could exist. And for a lot of people out there that are like struggling to find a goal or to find clarity, start with that. Start with what would the best version of you look like, and then take the daily habits like Dave attested to strive to become that person. And if you're ever feeling a little bit weird, that's typically just feedback from the universe saying your thoughts are out of whack or you're not on the right track. And oh, by the way, for the audience, should you check out what Dave has going on in regards to the coaching, all that stuff, he's the best in the world at what he does. So I wanted to say that too.
Oh, man, I appreciate that. Hey, here's the thing. If you are struggling to have the future version of yourself play like a movie in your head, I'm going to argue that there may be some things that are happening in your current circumstances that are compromising your ability to dream, right? When I had, change in the end of my marriage as a thing that I now had to wrestle with, one of the first casualties in my divorce was my imagination. I had a really hard time seeing a vision of what the future could look like because my current circumstances were compromising that imagination. So the first thing that I had to do, and I would encourage anyone who's in that season of stuck, I had to really get deep in a relationship with my fear, because most of what was clouding my imagination was the fear of something that was new and unknown. This like confusion of, man, how do I get through and make progress in do something new that I've not done before? How do I create a new identity in a space where obviously I'm no longer who I've been? And after I did that, then I had to ask just a question of like, foundationally, have I set myself up to actually withstand what will inevitably be equilibrium challenging conditions because of what is now a decision to step into something new? Like, you're going to go into a new space. It's going to be jarring and disorienting. As it is jarring and disorienting, what steps can you take to create as stable a foundation as possible? And for me, that foundation has been health, right? And so I had to ask the question, I would challenge you again, if you're feeling stuck, is your foundation steady in the 5 dimensions of health? Your mental, emotional, relational, spiritual, and physical health. It's not just about your physical health. I think it's holistic. You got to think about each. And for me, asking a question of what is the 1 or 2 or 3 things that I need in this season, given the circumstances that I am currently facing, that if I were to implement them in life, would allow me to create that steady base from which I can now, with more confidence and more courage, step into this new season. Into this new place. And so I made the list of, okay, here are the 3 things I need for my physical health, for my mental health, my emotional health, my spiritual health, my relational health. And those things, the answers to those questions became my daily routine, became my habits, became the boundaries I needed, or the way I needed to audit and change the way I was consuming content that was more hopeful and positive than it, had maybe previously been. And going through that exercise, now that I'd addressed some fear and created a sturdy foundation from which I could step into something new, my imagination now was resuscitated, like, yelling clear and hitting the paddles on a chest, in a way that now could allow me to set some goals on how to every day take steps closer to who I could now see that vision for. If you don't have the vision, it's what you said. If you don't have a bullseye to aim at, you're never going to hit it. But if your imagination has been compromised in any way by the crazy tumultuous nature of these last couple of years worth of the world being turned upside down, address some of the fear, get the foundation set, and then make sure that once you do, that you've got that vision cast. It takes a little bit of time, but if you can do it, it'll change everything.
Yes, you're an absolute fire and you can't be stopped. The only negative I got going on is we don't have 10 hours to chat. This is awesome, brother. And for the audience that might not be familiar, it's very well documented. You were married to Rachel Hollis and you guys had a great relationship, and then it ended. And I think this is so powerful because there's so many people out there that go through something similar, not exactly the same, but similar, and they feel very defeated, which is a natural, I think, emotion. But with Dave, and Dave did, he went through his stuff, but now he's not only back on the horse, he's happy and he's thriving and he's doing his thing. And I think the great message, obviously there's a lot of messages, but one specifically is there's life after life, right? Like when you get knocked down,
yeah.
like guys, like it's just a season, right? It's just a season. And if you allow yourself to heal and put yourself back out there, you never know what's over the next wave.
Yeah. I mean, just continue, like you build tenacity by having to keep getting back up when life keeps knocking you down. And as much as, again, you don't love it when it's happening. You said perspective earlier. Like I had the benefit of being surrounded by people who were able to assure me that the short-term circumstances weren't the long-term sentence of what was going to happen or be happening for the rest of time. My grandma Lee just turned 100 years old. She's a baller. And I had a conversation with her at the beginning of this divorce journey. Like, she asked me how things were going. I said, they're kind of both. Like, it's sad, but I am hopeful. It's hard, but I'm learning. Like I feel broken at times, but I'm also more fixed than I've ever been. And she said, I have the benefit of something you don't. 100 years of time on this planet. I have literally been through everything. Right. And like she's she raised 5 kids as a single mom after divorce. She was a veteran of war. She lost a son to cancer, a grandson by suicide. Like most of her friends at 100 years old, they're gone, right? Like she has processed loss on a scale that I can't even contemplate. But she said, hey, what I know is that I didn't enjoy the things that I was going through in the midst of them. But I know that I got through every single one of those hard things, and I came out the other side stronger and with a sense of gratitude for how persevering through them made me into who I have become. And I will tell you, as much as that's true for me, it's true for you as well. And there was something in the gift of that perspective that allows you to say, all right, I've got to keep on going. Like there's going to be something good that comes out of this. I do feel is it happening for you or to you thing on a regular basis. So many of those things, again, that I wouldn't have necessarily wished for, were complicit in having developed something that I had been desperately interested in. I'm a person of faith. I have for my whole life prayed. What I think I got wrong about prayer, but was acutely aware of in a season of going through harder things, is that your prayers being made and them being answered in the way that you'd like are 2 completely different things. And so many of the things that I'd prayed for were absolutely delivered to me. I just didn't like that I was inconvenienced by them being disconnected from how I wish they would have been answered, right? Like I've become in so many ways the person I'd prayed I would have become. I just wished it would have happened with a different delivery mechanism. And that's not the way that prayer works, or that's not the way life works. And so if you cast a vision for who you want to be, you've got a sense of what it would mean to you to get to that next level, and adversity comes knocking at the door, it's likely that you are being offered that opportunity to become this thing that you've hoped for. It's just going to be in an inconvenient delivery mechanism that you maybe hadn't had the imagination to contemplate as the way you were going to become who you were meant to be.
This is really deep stuff, brother. And I appreciate you pulling back the curtain on this stuff. I'm curious, you ever study or look into Kabbalah, the Zohar, any of that stuff?
I haven't, no.
Only because, all the spiritual stuff, there's of course similarities, everyone talks about gratitude and so forth. But one thing that they teach in Kabbalah, which is something I got into for a little while, because I'll try anything, is just that when you get that like opponent in your head or that negative voice that usually is temptation, that's an opportunity to practice resistance and resist it. And then you will gain more spiritual light than as if it wasn't even there in the first place. And it just reminded me kind of about what you're saying is when the adversity knocks, and spoiler alert, it will knock. What is this moment really about? And how can you process it and then utilize it, obviously, for good? There's always a lesson. And like you said, or I said, life happens for us, not to us. If we just kind of take a minute and breathe, we can kind of figure it out. And it won't always be so simple, like you said. The prayers won't always be answered in the same delivery mechanism as you have hoped for. But as long as you have that awareness, and I know you're big on that and you're so good at it,
yeah,
you could be aware and you could just kind of take a second and say, what is this trying to teach me?
yeah. And the thing is, I think part of it starts with faith, maybe not religious faith in this instance, but like a belief that the things you need will be made available to you when you need them most in the journey along the way, not when it is maybe most convenient or necessarily when you would wish that these things might be made available to you, but when you need them most. And so I can remember, certainly in like some of the hardest parts of my journey, just starting the day with this belief that I was going to see a micro miracle. And you, as it turns out, see the things that you're looking for. Like you can find those moments of gratitude. You can find those things that are the little piece of breadcrumb that's going to keep you moving on the journey toward your destination. But you've got to believe that it exists. And there's plenty of people. I mean, I'm sure anyone listening to this is something of an advanced mindset person already. But if you're a woe is me, life's unfair, it always tends to go other people's way, but not mine. And that's the way you walk into the world. Trust me, you will have your hypothesis confirmed. Like you will find evidence that in fact, life is unfair to you. If you also, the alternative ends up being true, head out. Oops, sorry, I lost you there for a second. If you also head out and just have this belief that, you know what, even though I might not necessarily enjoy the way that the world meets me, I will find a way to see the good that can come from any situation, the way that I might learn or grow or be connected to somebody because of the way any certain situation comes up. You'll find evidence of that as well.
This is awesome, brother. No, it's 100% true. And you talked about faith several times. And because number one, I did my homework because I want to give this conversation the respect it deserves, but it was easy for me because I'm such a fan of yours. How important is faith to you? And when did you really start to develop it? For me personally, like I'm not so much, I grew up Jewish and all that stuff, but I'm not so much as a religious type of cat as I am working and strengthening my relationship with God, which has gotten so strong over the last few years. And it just changed everything for me. And there's nothing quite like a confidence in having a relationship with whatever it is that you believe in, the universe, God, Jesus, whatever the case may be. But I'm curious when you were started and how important it is to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a part of my life for my entire life. I grew up in a religious household, Christian. My mom grew up Catholic, my dad Protestant. I was raised in a Protestant non-denominational church and went to church on the reg. My relationship with God is something that has, to your point, continued to develop more and more over time and has actually developed outside of the quote unquote capital C church setting as much as it has in the church setting, where I've had experiences with God in nature. I've had experiences with God through community. I've had experiences with God, especially in adversity, where being forced to my knees in drawing closer to God is something that drew him closer to me, or, God, whether it's a he or a she, God, closer to me, right? But the headline ends up, right? The headline ends up being that saying that you're a person of faith without having that faith tested is there's an emptiness in that. And I think I was the beneficiary of a life with not as many big, huge, holy cow, traumatic experiences, that when I said I was a person of faith, I don't know that I'd ever had the faith tested enough to really even know what that meant. And I've been through, a pretty harrowing adoption journey where we had children that we thought we were adopting, but then ultimately, after they'd been placed in our home, it turned out that they were not adoptable. Man, that tested your faith, right? Like I left a career for a calling, but in deciding to leave that stability and that identity and that status, I had so many questions of who I was now that I was no longer who I'd been. And it was my identity in my faith that was a staple that I could depend on. Certainly in the midst of divorce, like, man, I was angry at God. I was angry that this thing that I didn't think should have happened was happening. And I came to appreciate that my faith journey also would include me appreciating that God's big enough to handle my frustration, and that he can meet me on a rock in nature as I'm crying and yelling at the sky to, assure me that this is going to turn out exactly as it is intended and was intended. And you do not yet see the full picture of the good that will come from the situation. And I'll tell you, a year and a half into this now, the perspective I have on all of this is so radically different than the way I felt in the first 3 months. And that's part of the promise of my faith, which is trust that this is going to be something that works for you, or to afford you an opportunity to continue to bear some of the light that has been given to you. It's just going to take some time for you to be able to see the results of my work in progress.
Yeah, beautifully said, brother. And it's so true. And I couldn't agree more. The detours are part of life. And look, no one's life goes just up in a straight line. There's always peaks and valleys and so forth, especially in the entrepreneurial life. So I wanted to ask you, it's very well documented. You worked at Disney for a very long time, super successful. And now you're doing something a little different. So 2 questions. Number 1, right off the gate, who's your favorite Disney character?
This is so random, but this is the one that I tend to use. I am in the executive leadership program where when you hit a certain level at the Walt Disney Company, you get to have an experience where you put a costumed character on at the park so that you can interact with and see the experience of these characters through the eyes of the attendees, especially the kids. And because of how tall I am, I'm 6'4", I was Darkwing Duck, which I'm not sure. It was a great
show.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's like running the park to see Darkwing Duck, but they tend to give the character costumes that they would let executives wear. You're not getting, a staple, as it were. But that experience of the reminder of the power of this brand and the way that its customers associate these characters with, everything about your kind of like childhood, like happiness, whether you're an adult, those eyes that you get, these kids, the eyes that they got, that experience for me was like one of the coolest experiences of my 17 years. And that character, that's the one that stands out, even though there are plenty of others that are so good. It was just the memory of that day is a thing I'll take with me for the rest of my life.
I can guarantee you that was a plot twist for the listeners. They didn't see that one coming. It's funny. Right? I remember Darkwing Duck when I was a kid on TV and so forth, but Disney is my favorite company. I love them. Who doesn't love Disney? And now like the Star Wars, the Avengers, all that stuff, just always putting out top quality stuff. It really is so special. Real quickly, did you see the new Spider-Man film?
I haven't yet, but I need to. I was saving it for when I was going to see it with my boys, and we just got back from having been traveling. So I got to go see it. I've heard it's amazing.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it for sure.
Right on.
Definitely really cool, and a lot of good surprises and stuff like that. So now you're doing the entrepreneur thing and you're crushing it and you're doing your thing. And it's so obvious how passionate you are about it. It looks like this is what you were born to do and so forth. How challenging, or maybe not, was that transition from Disney, which is like a corporate job, at good of a company as when you think of Disney, you think Apple, Disney. How was that transition for you?
It was tough. It was real tough. I made a choice to leave. At the time, I had been the head of sales at the studio for about 7 years. And it was a tough decision because it made sense to me, but made sense to no other person. And so I was, I think, very conscientious of and worried about the way that I might be received or judged, as it turned out, for anyone who's looking for permission and is worried that other people are going to be thinking about them. No one was thinking about me. There was a lot of wasted energy around me worrying about what other people were going to think or say about my transition. But I got into the job where I was scaling this small media company with my then wife, Rachel. And I thought that there was going to be perfect transferability of the things that I did as a leader inside of that big conglomerate environment and what ultimately happens inside of the everyday in an entrepreneurial startup kind of environment. And there just wasn't a ton of practical application. If I had anything at Disney, I was leading teams in 70 countries, thousands of humans, and all of them had expertise that just stretched decades worth of time. So I describe it as they had a nose for smoke, right? Like if there was going to be a problem that could come up, they tended to sniff it out before it actually turned into a fire. And I usually, as a leader, was getting a report on the extinguishing of smoke before it turned into something bigger rather than fire itself. When I got into the startup environment, there were fires like every 4 hours. And in some ways it was because I was now working in a space that was new with people who'd also not necessarily been to this part of the forest before. And so we'd never not only seen fire, we'd never smelled smoke. And so the kind of rolling up your sleeves, nails getting dirty, reframing of fires was an important thing. It was actually, you mentioned you going to John Maxwell. It was John who, I was backstage, Rachel was speaking, I'm kind of bemoaning this reality that it feels like every 4 hours there's another thing that's caught on fire. And he said something that was so simple, again, kind of in that vein of perspective. He said, well, hey, Dave, you can either have consecutive good days or you can run a small business, but you can't have both. You can either have consecutive good days without problems, or you can run a small business. You can't have both, because problems are the price of entry for running a small business. I was like, oh, so you're saying this is normal? Yeah, this is normal. And what I came to appreciate in, again, like, what is the benefit of time? Every good thing that we did when it came to changing product to meet consumer needs, or processes, like to handle the way that our teams were working, or people, having the right people with the right skills. All of the things that became the reason why the company worked as well as it did, or served the needs of the customers as well as it did, were born out of fire. There was something in that fire that was meant to teach us how to scale, how to grow, how to meet needs. And so changing the way that we saw fires as problems instead as instruction manuals as the thing that would allow us to grow, if we were willing to take ego and put it aside, take the anxiety or panic that might come from the initial seeing, oh no, we let somebody down, we got a shipping snafu with this journal, or we didn't think about this as a potential problem in this event. Once you could see it as, oh no, this is an opportunity so that we can get it better, get it right the next time we go do it. It kind of just changes everything.
All about perspective.
Yeah.
I love it, brother. Yeah, it's so true. And born out of adversity, right? That's some of the greatest things, and some of the greatest like legends like on earth. Like they had to go through some shit, for lack of better words, to get to where they are. Can I ask you a personal question?
Of course.
How is your relationship now with your ex-wife, Rachel?
It's good. I mean, we tend to stay super focused on the kids.
I imagine.
So, right, like co-parenting is a thing that you try to do as well as you can, acknowledging that we have very little experience in co-parenting and divorce. So we're learning as we go. But we try to just, like amicability is what we're going to shoot for at all times, period. And focus on the kids. They're the number one priority in both of our lives. And so it's easy for us to stay in a really, really good place when we stay focused on that. I think we learned that there's something important about the kind of respectful boundaries and the individual nature of our now individual journeys. At the beginning, I think that there was this hope that there was going to be a little bit more of we'll just continue to be a part of each other's lives in every aspect of life. We had entertained the possibility of continuing to work together at the very beginning. And we realized no, it's actually going to just be healthier and better for the both of us to support each other from afar, to stay super connected in the health, well-being, the welfare of our kids, and to honor that we're now on these individual journeys. And it's been great. Honestly, I think everyone kind of does it their own way. I'm in a relationship now with someone in Heidi who has a different kind of relationship with her exes, and I just I appreciate it, and it works for them. And I don't know that it's necessarily that one way is the way that it works. I think everyone finds what ends up working best for their individual circumstance. And divorce sucks, straight up. I hope it doesn't happen to anyone. But I hope that if you are someone that ends up having to go through it, that you give yourself some grace and appreciating that right is going to be what works best and right for you and the people inside of your family that are affected by it. And that's kind of it.
So beautifully said, bro. The way you articulate things, I just want to acknowledge you for a second. It's unbelievable. And it's straight up gripping. And for the audience, like, so true, guys. Like divorce sucks, but at the same time, there's life after life. And Dave has proven that, and he continues to show it. And one thing that I love that you said is look, like there's always a common ground, or at least hopefully there is. You could find one. And for them, it's the children. And that's priority number one. And if they both make that the priority number one, then it should be amicable, right? Because the kids is the most important thing. Doesn't mean that you guys have to hang out or do dinners or whatever the case may be. Whatever happens, if that happens. But I just want to acknowledge you guys for that, because I know it's challenging and you guys are obviously making the most of it. And both of you now have separate lives. So kudos to you guys.
Yeah, no, and here's the thing. I will always cheer and root for her to be as successful as she can be, happy. She's in a relationship. I could not be happier for her, having someone that she's found, also life after life, right? Like she's found something that's good for her, and it's good for us, because when each of us is experiencing success, whatever the definition of it ends up being, and whether it's relationship or commercial success, anything, that's good for the ecosystem, because we're going to be part of each other's lives for the rest of our lives. And I'm always going to root for her to have the very, very best in all aspects of life.
Yeah, I love that, brother. Such a great mindset, such a great attitude. Your book, Built by Courage, what's the deal with it, and where can the whole audience find it, and so forth?
So Built Through Courage came out back in October. I mean, again, it's just like the thing we touched on, this idea that you were put here with intention, and that there is an opportunity, a mandate to honor that intention in stepping into places that you maybe are a little less comfortable with, that are outside of your comfort zone. Because of that being where you will be actually able to grow, learn, become this version of who you were meant to be. It's scary having to try new things, do new things, which is why courage is a requirement if you're going to make that step, right? Your comfort zone is surrounded on all sides by a moat of fear. There is no drawbridge. You got to plow right through it if you're going to get to learning, if you're going to get to growth, if you're going to get to fulfillment or purpose. And so you gotta be courageous. And so the book is basically broken down into an exercise in self-awareness, right? Like really understanding where you are, appreciating and casting that vision for where you'd like to go, and then getting really practical into the tactical steps of what it's going to take on an every single day basis to walk through that action gate to get yourself there. It's 45 or so chapters worth of writing, but at the end of each of those chapters, there's a journaling prompt that takes that passive reading or listening experience and turns it into a more active learning kind of an experience that, if you're willing to do the work and put the pen to paper, I do think it's something that will fundamentally change the way you think about what it's going to take to get to that place where you can actually honor the gifts that you were intentionally put here to bring to the world.
Yes, and everybody has gifts. It's about identifying them. Is the book on Audible, Dave?
The book's on Audible. I read the book. So
it's your voice?
It's my voice. Yes. That's right. You can hear me read the book. And it's available wherever you buy books. So yeah, you can check out literally wherever you buy books, and it's there, Built Through Courage.
I love it. We'll land up playing with these final last two questions. I heard you say this, and this really hit home to me, in regards to delusionally optimistic as opposed to toxic positivity, something along those lines. And that really hit home to me, and I think it will for the audience as well. What exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I am certainly never, hoping to come off as a toxic positivity kind of person, though I tend to be someone who is going to be delusionally optimistic, that I will just choose to see the good, that I want to, in a world where you could just as easily be convinced that the bad is happening, or that this isn't going to turn out well, or that nothing good can come from this. I just think the inverse of all three of those things is absolutely 100% true as well. And I'm going to choose to live in that space, not in a way that, again, is dismissive of the boundaries that might be necessary, or accountability that might need to be, applied to something or someone. But I do want to see the good. I want to see the good in whatever is happening in my life. And I think it's a choice.
It's definitely a choice. And I look, I knew there was going to be alignment here, but this is great. You speak it to my soul, brother. And I'm the same way. And I often say delusionally optimistic, but there's always a choice on your perception. And
Yeah.
you choose to see optimism and you choose to think positively. And that's your choice. And for the audience listening, we don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I would suggest trying it for at least 24 hours. And then after that challenge, go back to being realistic. And I think what you'll notice is what you really thought by being realistic is actually pessimistic. And it's a lot more fun to live in that space of optimism, straight up.
Yeah. Yeah. And it goes back to what I said. You go out in the world, you see what you're looking for. If you go out looking for the positive, you go out looking for the silver lining, you go out looking for the thing to be grateful for, it will present itself. So, why not make that choice and go out looking for it? It doesn't mean that you're not going to still have to deal with some hard stuff. You will. But that hard stuff, like I said, has produced so much of the good in my life as the byproduct of the adversity that was placed in front of me. So I can see that there's going to be good, even if it's going to be something that I don't necessarily love to have to go through.
Same. Agreed. Have you ever ran a full marathon?
I have. Yeah. I did the LA Marathon. No, the Austin Marathon back in 2020. That was my first and only.
Any other ones on the horizon?
I've transitioned out. I as much as I still do a little bit of running, I've really gotten into weightlifting and trying to see what happens.
I see those guns, buddy.
I'm trying to I've been through now a fitness challenge that my girlfriend Heidi and I are doing together that had me see transformation in my frame, in the way that I could put muscle on that I just didn't think was possible. And so we're starting another one. It kicks off on January 10th. So we've got another 8 weeks worth of transformation coming my way. And so I've been focusing a little bit more on time in gym than I have time on roads. It still provides that same kind of therapeutic church, therapy kind of benefit when I'm in there lifting. But there's been something beautiful about pushing myself into spaces where I didn't think I could do that or couldn't see the results in that way that transcend into every other part of my life. And so there's something about this physical transformation that's also afforded me some breakthrough in mental and emotional transformation. And I'm just kind of digging, pushing in this space to see what's possible when I lift a little bit more or push a little bit further than I've previously done so. Proximity to someone who has an ability to see in you something that you might not be able to see in yourself is one of Heidi's superpowers. And so as a transformation expert as she is, she's worked for 2 decades in fitness, when she's been a little bit of a voice that counters some of my limiting beliefs in whatever I'm thinking about doing inside of this physical arena. And it's been a gift, because now that I've seen some of what I can do, I can't unsee it. And it's helping propel me in every other part of my life, which is rad.
Isn't that so beautiful? You can't unsee it. And now it's really well, not what can I do? What can't we do?
That's right. No, that's right. And that's then it's game on. Then it's game on.
Then it's game on. I love this, brother. Thank you so much for your time today. Like I said, I could talk to you for 10 hours. The audience is 1 million strong. I know they're going to be obsessed with you in 2 seconds. What's the best way for the whole audience to support you?
Come hang out. Let's just become part of a community together. To your point, I have a podcast called Rise Together. It comes out on Thursdays. I tend to spend my time on social, on Instagram. I have a site, mrdavehollis.com, that has the details of an upcoming men's conference in Austin, Texas, the 4th through 6th. This fitness challenge that I'm up to with Heidi starting on January 10th. Certainly, my book is out. And if you're interested in diving a little bit deeper into what the intention of your creator might be and how you can unlock it, grab it. I think it's a rad resource that you will enjoy.
Yes. For the audience listening, if you take what I have to say to heart, go follow Dave, especially on social media. He has unbelievable content. And if you think we should be on his show and you'd like to see that, let him know that as well. But go follow him. He's awesome and he's not shy. And he's just got some unbelievable things going on. How can I personally support you, brother?
Oh man, I mean, just this conversation and your friendship, because we're going to have that coming out of this, is the thing that I need. I need other like-minded people who, on the days that I start to forget who I am, can remind me of who I am through friendship, a quick text, a quick call. That's going to be the way that we're going to be able to support each other in all the fun that we have coming up.
Done. I'm going to tag you on some stuff on Instagram and we'll communicate there. And I'm so excited to build a friendship straight up with you, brother. And Dave, I just want you to know you're the definition of resilience, grit, heart, courage, and growth. You become the captain of your life and you're making the world a better place by teaching millions of others how to step into their purpose and fulfill their highest potential. Your mindset is absolutely bulletproof and your faith is on a whole nother level. You're an unbelievable father and role model and beacon of hope for anyone coming up today with big goals and aspirations. I could personally guarantee your best is yet to come. Keep on spreading your wings. So much love and respect for you. Thank you so much for stopping by and dropping all these nuggets today, Dave.
Let's go. Oh man, Craig, thanks for having me, brother. This was awesome. I appreciate you, and I look forward to staying connected and continuing this friendship now beyond this show into everything that we have coming up, man. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, that was too much fun, brother, and I really do want to build a friendship.
Right on. All right. Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for introducing me to your audience. I hope you all got something out of this, and if you did, make sure you tell people about it so that you can get more people to show up and support Craig in this work that he's doing here. He's doing some good stuff.
That's right. I appreciate you saying that.